The lone station on Highway 13. Highway 13. Desolate, empty, a stretch of road that seemed to go on forever, with nothing but the occasional tumbleweed to break the monotony. It was a place where time seemed to stand still, where the silence was so profound it was almost deafening. A ribbon of asphalt unfurling under a moonless sky. The darkness was so complete it felt like a heavy blanket, smothering everything in its path. The road stretched out like a black snake, winding its way through the barren landscape, with no end in sight. Only one point of light pierced the oppressive darkness. Benny's gas stop. The neon sign flickered intermittently, casting an eerie glow on the cracked pavement below. It was a beacon of sorts, a solitary island of light in an ocean of darkness. A beacon maybe, or a trap. It depended on who you asked. Some saw it as a lifeline, a place to refuel and rest before continuing their journey. Others saw it as a place of danger, a spot where the shadows seemed to move on their own, where the air was thick with an unspoken menace. Tonight, it was Arlo's domain. Arlo, a young man with dreams bigger than this small, forgotten place. He had taken the night shift to save money, to one day leave this desolate stretch of highway behind, but for now, he was here, alone in the darkness. The wind howled like a banshee, whipping around the old building. It was a relentless force, tearing at the edges of the gas station, making the old structure groan and creak in protest. The sound was almost otherworldly, a constant reminder of the isolation of this place. It rattled the window panes, a constant, unnerving rhythm. The glass shook in its frames, threatening to shatter with each gust. It was a sound that could drive a person mad if they let it, a reminder of just how fragile the barrier between inside and outside really was. Inside, Arlo, a lanky young man with tired eyes, pretended not to notice. He had grown accustomed to the sounds of the night, the creaks and groans of the old building, the howling wind. It was all part of the job, part of the price he paid for his dreams. He was used to the loneliness, or so he thought, but tonight felt different. There was a heaviness in the air, a sense of foreboding that he couldn't shake. He glanced at the clock, counting down the hours until dawn, until he could leave this place behind, if only for a little while. The night stretched on, endless and unforgiving, and Arlo could only hope that he would make it through to see the light of day. Meet Arlo, the night owl, graveyard shift, the hours when the world sleeps and shadows come alive. Fitting name. Arlo had been working it for 6 months, 6 long months of solitude and silence, broken only by the hum of the refrigerators and the occasional customer. College fund, his mama said. He loved his mama. Every night he reminded himself of the promise he made to her, to save up, to make something of himself, to make her proud. So, here he was, stuck between aisles of dusty snacks and the faint smell of gasoline. The shelves, lined with chips and candy bars, seemed to mock him with their staleness. His only company, the flickering fluorescent lights, and the occasional rumbling truck. The lights buzzed overhead, casting eerie shadows that danced on the walls. Tonight felt different though, heavier. There was a weight in the air, a sense of foreboding that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. The air hung thick, charged with an unseen energy. It was as if the night itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Arlo tried to ignore it, focusing on a dog-eared paperback. The words on the page blurred as his mind wandered, trying to shake off the unease. Couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on him, watching, waiting. Every creak of the building, every rustle of the wind outside seemed amplified, feeding his growing paranoia. Time seemed to crawl. Each minute felt like an eternity. Arlo glanced at the clock, willing the hands to move faster, to bring an end to this unsettling night. He checked the security cameras, hoping to find some reassurance in the grainy footage. But the screens only showed the same empty scenes, the same oppressive stillness. A sudden noise made him jump. His heart raced as he strained to listen, trying to pinpoint the source. Was it just the building settling or something more sinister? He grabbed a flashlight and walked through the aisles, the beam cutting through the darkness. Each step echoed in the silence, heightening his sense of isolation. Finding nothing, he returned to the counter, letting out a sigh of relief. But the feeling of being watched persisted, gnawing at the edges of his mind. He tried to focus on his book again, but the words seemed meaningless. His eyes kept darting around, searching for the source of his unease. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead. The tension was palpable, a tangible force pressing down on him. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. Another noise, louder this time. Arlo's grip tightened on the flashlight. His pulse quickened as he prepared to face whatever was lurking in the shadows. He took a deep breath, steeling himself. Whatever it was, he would face it head on. He had to. For his mama, for his future, for himself. With determined steps, he moved into the darkness, the flashlight beam leading the way. The night was heavy, but Arlo was ready to face whatever it held. Whispers in the dead of night. A noise. Faint. It was the kind of sound that made the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. A barely perceptible murmur that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere all at once. Scratching. Coming from the back room. The noise was persistent, like nails on a chalkboard, sending shivers down his spine. It was as if something, or someone, was trying to claw its way out. Arlo froze, his heart thumping a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He could feel the blood pounding in his ears, drowning out the silence of the night. His eyes darted around the room, searching for the source of the noise. Tools, he thought. Must be wind knocking tools over. But deep down he knew it wasn't the wind. The air was still, and the windows were shut tight. The rational part of his mind struggled to find a logical explanation. He tried to convince himself. Didn't work. The doubt gnawed at him, a relentless whisper in the back of his mind. He could feel the fear creeping in, wrapping around him like a cold, damp blanket. He put down his book, the silence amplifying every little creak and groan of the old building. The pages rustled as he set it aside, the sound unnaturally loud in the stillness. He strained his ears, listening for any sign of movement. There it was again, scratching, whispering. The sound seemed to be getting closer, more insistent. They echoed through the empty room, filling the space with an eerie, unsettling presence. His hand went to the baseball bat he kept under the counter, just in case. The wood felt solid and reassuring in his grip, a small comfort in the face of the unknown. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever might come next. The whispers grew louder, almost as if they were calling his name. Arlo tightened his grip on the bat, his knuckles turning white. He knew he had to face whatever was lurking in the shadows. With a final, resolute breath, he stepped towards the back room, ready to confront the source of the whispers in the dead of night. Shadows dance, fear takes hold. He crept towards the back room, each step echoing in the silence. His hand trembled as he reached for the doorknob, cold, clammy. He pushed the door open, heart pounding, empty, nothing, just shadows twisting in the dim light. He let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Then he saw it. A single word scrawled on the dusty floor. Leave. The gas pump's eerie glow. A car pulled up. A sleek black vintage muscle car. It didn't belong on this deserted stretch of highway. Arlo watched as the driver got out. Tall, shadowy, face obscured by the darkness. The stranger walked towards him, every movement fluid, almost predatory. Arlo gripped the bat tighter, knuckles white. "Fill it up," he croaked, his voice barely a whisper. The figure stopped, tilted his head, and then pointed towards the pump. A customer from beyond the grave? Arlo walked out to the pump, his hand shaking as he unscrewed the gas cap. He could feel the stranger's eyes boring into him, heavy, intense, like he was looking through him. He tried to focus on the numbers spinning on the pump, tried to ignore the cold that seemed to emanate from the figure. The numbers stopped. 44.44 gallons. Arlo swallowed hard. He didn't like this, not one bit. Vanishing act in aisle 5. The stranger was gone. Vanished. Arlo raced back into the store, heart pounding like a drum solo. No car, no sound of an engine, like he was never there. He checked the security cameras, static. He checked the cash register, empty. But then he noticed something. Aisle 5, the candy bars. They were all turned around, facing the wall. The phone rang, jangled through the silence, shrill and insistent. Arlo stared at it, every instinct screaming at him not to answer. He let it ring, once, twice. He couldn't take it anymore. "Hello?" His voice cracked. Silence. Then a voice, raspy, distant. "They're coming." Click. Dead air. Arlo slammed the phone down. Who was coming? What did they want? He had to get out of here. Now. He grabbed his jacket, his keys, his bat. He didn't look back as he ran out of the store, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He jumped in his car, slammed the door, and hit the gas. As he sped away, he glanced in the rearview mirror. A figure stood in the middle of the road, silhouetted against the gas station lights, watching him. He drove all night, didn't stop until the sun began to paint the eastern sky with hues of orange and pink. He pulled into a diner, exhausted, terrified, and more than a little confused. Had it all been real? Or had the isolation, the darkness, played tricks on his mind? He looked at his reflection in the greasy spoon. He looked older, haunted. He reached into his pocket, needed a cigarette. His fingers brushed against something else, something cold, metallic. He pulled it out, a car key. Attached to it, a small tag. Engraved on the tag, 4444, the same numbers as the gas pump. His blood ran cold. It wasn't the isolation, it was much, much worse. He was not alone. He was never alone. He was living someone else's nightmare.